All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to the final Daily December 2023 episode ever, because when I do Daily December next year, it'll be 2024. But yeah, this is day 31. You didn't have to look for that because I know December has 31 days. Because it's been a month, guys. A hell of a month. All right, so today I want to talk about one of the most infuriating things that I see constantly. And it was exemplified to me when I was watching a streamer that I normally don't watch, but they were playing one of my favorite games, and I'm like, you know what? I want to see how this person in particular reacts to this game. And a phrase that came up constantly was, "That doesn't make sense." And for me personally, one of the most infuriating things I see a lot of people do or say can be boiled down to the phrase, "that doesn't make sense." And this is why. And I'm not going to name the particular person that said this, mostly because this is not about correcting that particular person. This is about something that I have observed amongst a ton of people, to the point where I think the majority of people think this particular way, and it frustrates me beyond measure. So why does "that doesn't make sense" get me so upset? Well, because a lot of times, like I would say probably 90 to 95% of the times, the thing that someone is reacting to and saying that doesn't make sense, or something relatively similar. Another one that's really common is, "well, that's stupid." The thing that they're reacting to actually makes perfect sense, but they have refused to take the time to learn the context of the problem that they're encountering. Really good example. The game that this particular person playing was Monster Hunter World. I love Monster Hunter World. I also like Monster Hunter Rise. I personally think Monster Hunter World is a better game. There was a lot of potential in Monster Hunter Rise, and they did some cool things. Like, I love Palicos, or Palamutes. Palicos are cool too, but Palamutes, I'm a dog guy. I love me dogs. Puppers are the best. So I always go. I always go into battle with my Palamute rather than my Palico, because it's a pupper, and puppers is man's best friend. But they got a few things that they just kind of simplified for reasons that I didn't really understand, and there's a few aspects of Monster Hunter Rise that I don't think they ever took full advantage of, and kind of left them off feeling half banked. One of those being the switch skill system. It could have been a really interesting, unique way to create multiple play styles for each weapon, kind of like what they did in Monster Hunter Generations, which is my favorite Monster Hunter game. And they just didn't. All the switch skills were just a choice between two options, and generally there was a good option and then a very specialized option, and 90% of people just take the good option. And it meant that it really didn't give you a lot of choices. As I've mentioned before, when in game design in general, good game design gives you choices, bad game design gives you right answers. And a lot of switch skills were right answers. So anyway, going back to Monster Hunter World, this particular streamer was running around, and they had just completely ignored one of the main mechanics of Monster Hunter World, which is you actually have to track the monsters that you are supposed to be hunting. And each area that you go into to hunt, you generally go in to hunt a specific monster, and there will almost always be more large monsters there than the one that you were supposed to hunt. And so the way that you find the specific one that you are there to hunt is you actually look for tracks and other signs of the creature and use those to train these things called scout flies to actually find it. And it's a really interesting mechanic because it does a somewhat decent job of simulating how actual tracking works. Because actual tracking is not, ooh, look, here is a line of footprints that I can just follow. No, actual tracking involves looking for signs that what you're tracking has been there by looking at a lot of different things. Sometimes you will find footprints. Sometimes you will just find broken or disturbed pieces of the land. And a lot of it is done through inferences. Like, well, I found this thing here and I found this thing here. And understanding how the creature works and what it's motivated by, I can predict that it went this general direction. And I can guess that this is the way that I want to go to find this creature. And whether that's hunting as in like sport hunting or it's tracking a fugitive or something like that's how it works. It's not really like you see in like, what do you call it? The Witcher 3, where you turn on your Witcher scent and then you just have a glowing path that you follow. It's not how tracking works. And you will lose, there will be long stretches where you can't really see it, and so you have to kind of use your instincts. Well, to kind of gamify that, they created the scout flies, where the scout flies will basically direct you to the next area. And then they will they will hover over the next track or next mark that the creature has left, because sometimes they will leave scratches on walls, sometimes they will leave like piles of feathers or something like that. Like all of those different things are things that you can do to track. And so they'll fly over and they'll make the thing that you're tracking glow green until you get enough information that they can actually track the monster. And then you just see the scout flies glowing bright green and going in a general direction that you have to kind of follow. And that gets you to the monster. Now, as you become more familiar with Monster Hunter World, which is true of every single Monster Hunter game, you don't really need the scout flies anymore. The maps themselves are finite. There's only so many places where the monsters will spawn. There's only so many places that they'll go, and they tend to follow somewhat patterns. And so after you get really comfortable with it, the scout flies are completely useless. But especially for new players, and anytime you're hunting a new monster, which happens constantly, it is very, very useful. It isn't until you've hunted the monster like a dozen times that you can really go, okay, I know where this one's going to be, and I know where this one's going to be. So that's how the mechanic works. This particular streamer never learned that mechanic. They would simply hold the dash button and then just run in a random direction, mashing the gather button, so that every time they went across something that they could gather, they would just instantly pick it up and then keep running. And for the first few hunts, that worked perfectly fine, because either they weren't hunting a specific monster, they were hunting like groups of smaller monsters, which show up in various places. You can't really track them. You just have to find where they are. Or there is only one monster on the map. And so they could just kind of blindly run around and they'd eventually find it. But they got to the point where the game was putting multiple monsters on the map. And because of that, they were getting multiple sets of tracks. And they weren't waiting to follow the scout flies or anything to track them. They were just running and randomly mashing the locate key. And what would happen is the scout flies are actually coded into the game as actual flies. Like they have actual mass, and they can only move a certain speed. And when they get to something, it doesn't immediately glow. The scout flies actually have to kind of land on it to make it glow, because it's not the tracks that are actually glowing. It is the scout flies themselves, and they're actually transferring whatever the bioluminescent essence that they have. They're transferring that onto that, which takes a little bit of time. It's not a lot of time. And if you're not running, generally the scout flies will find things before you get to them. If you are constantly running, you will actually outpace the scout flies, and you'll see a thing pop up to track something without it actually glowing or anything, and you'll just immediately collect it. And that provides some issues because then you can't figure out the direction that the track was going in, and so you don't know where you're supposed to go. You don't know if you're doing things backwards because the tracks are actual monster tracks, and so if you look at them, you can see which direction the toes are facing, and you can see what direction the monster was going. Again, it's actually a really interesting mechanic. This streamer just completely ignored all of that and was just running around randomly and smashing the button until the scout flies told him where to go. And it wasn't working this time, and they kept just finding random tracks that weren't leading them anywhere. And they finally just kind of stopped and said, well, why didn't that glow? They're supposed to glow if I'm doing it. This doesn't make sense. And that's what frustrates me, because everything is there in the game to explain why that doesn't work. It's all right in front of them. And all it would take is taking their finger off the sprint button and waiting for half a second and just observing what's going on. But they couldn't do that because they had already made the decision that, well, the reason things glow is because they're important. Because other games have done that. And so they've decided, well, this game works like every other game where if it's important, it'll glow, and if it's not important, it won't glow. So I only have to look at things that glow, and anything that doesn't glow doesn't matter. There is no basis for this conclusion in this game. Nothing in the game has pointed to the fact that only important things glow and things that don't glow aren't important. In fact, with how often the little prompts come up that they have collected something that never glowed, they have had a ton of information to contradict that assumption. That, okay, well, things just glow when they're important, and if they're not glowing, that means it's not important, and I can just run around and look for glowy things. But the streamer had just decided, this is how I want it to work, so this is how it's going to work. And then when it didn't work the way that they just decided it was supposed to work, they went, well, that doesn't make sense. This is a stupid game. They designed it wrong. No, they actually designed it perfectly. The point of the scout flies is not to make things glow. The point of the scout flies is to simulate you hunting as it would work in the real world with someone that actually has the skill to track and hunt creatures. That is the purpose of the scout flies. They're not there to make things glow. That is a side effect of their intended purpose of making it feel like you're actually hunting these monsters, not just running around and attacking things until they die. And this happened constantly during this stream. I actually watched 1.5 streams because it eventually got to the point where I got upset because they were trying to figure out a menu thing. Another fun fact, Monster Hunter World is a PS4 game. It was designed for the PS4, it released on the PS4, and about a year later, it released on a bunch of other platforms, including Windows. However, the game was designed for controllers. And this is one of the things that I hate about PC Master Race people. If you've never heard that phrase, it's basically the idea that all consoles are vastly inferior to a PC, and they shouldn't really exist. All games should always be made for PCs because PCs are better at everything. And 100% that's not true. It has never been true. It will never be true. PCs are highly customizable, and if you spend enough money on them, they can do astounding things. But the PC I currently use, which is I think 4 or 5 years old at this point, and is starting to show its age, was brand spanking new and top of the line, or almost top of the line when I got it. I went cheaper on a few parts like the video card, which I'm starting to realize was a huge mistake. But it's got an i9 processor. I think it's like a 7th generation i9. It's got what is it called? It's an NVIDIA card, the 20 series, GTX 20 series, which is now technically is 2 generations behind because they have the 30 series and then the current cool ones are the 40 series. And I think they're coming out with a 50 series soon. But anyway, my super awesome computer that I'm very, very proud of cost me, I think it was $2,500. And I had to do some massive saving up and put it on a credit card and pay it off over like 6 months. Like it was incredibly difficult for someone on disability to be able to afford that. But it also happened. So I guess maybe it isn't. Maybe it's only like 3.5, 4 years old. Because part of the thing that helped me pay for it was one of the checks that you got from the government in the U.S. that were monumentally dumb and shouldn't have happened, but I was, of course, going to use it because my old computer was on its last leg. And I always tend to buy top of the line because it means that I can use it a lot longer. So, yeah, PCs are great. But my PS5 cost me, was it $500, I think? Runs games significantly better than my PC does. And everything on my PS5 is controller compatible, which is important for me because using keyboard and mouse is extremely hard. So my PS5 is vastly superior to my PC and most PCs on the market because I know anything I get on my PS5 is going to work with the controller. Even if a game has controller support on PC, it doesn't mean it's actually going to work the way it's supposed to. Really good example, Dragon Age 2, it's a game that some people love, some people hate. On PC, has no controller support. On the PS3, I think is where I got it. It has controller support, and I can play it on PS3. I cannot play it on my PC because I can't click in the right spot using a keyboard and mouse. So anyway, the reason that got me to give up on this particular streamer was they were trying to do some, they were trying to reorganize their kind of hotkey bar. And the people in chat were really stupid. I'm going to give it to the streamer. The people in chat were remarkably bad at explaining things, and half of them were giving him intentionally incorrect information so that they would do things wrong and they would get frustrated because they enjoy watching this particular streamer get mad and cuss out people, which is an extremely common thing for streamers in general. People like to watch them get upset. So this particular streamer is sitting there, and what they want to do is modify basically a collection of hotkeys where if you hold the F1 key on the computer, it will bring up a bunch of hotkeys. And then if you push F2, it'll bring up the same hotkeys, but they'll have different things on them. And you can adjust each one of those. There's 4 different ones. So F1 through F4, you can do that. And it gives you basically this hotkey bar that can have up to 40 different things on it. Very, very useful. But it was designed for a controller. On a controller, it's remarkably easy to use. You hold the left bumper, and then if you push the left stick up, it will bring up your first set of radio menus, is what they call it on there, because they're in a circle when you use a controller. So it'll bring up your first radio menu. You push the left stick down, it'll bring up your second, left is third, right is fourth. Really simple, really easy. And then to select the particular thing, you use the right stick, which is exactly how a controller is designed to do. It's designed so that you can use your index fingers to push the triggers, and you can use your thumbs to use the control sticks simultaneously. And so by doing that way, they basically gave you, I think for that, because there's only 8, so whatever 8 times 4 is, God, math is so bad for me. 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 4 must be 32 then. Yeah. So it actually gives you 32 instead of 40. Again, not the worst thing in the world. You will never use all 32. And in fact, one of them is generally assigned just to doing different emotes, which I've never used in the game, but some people really like them. So, Yeah, so what's happening at that particular point is he's actually in the wrong menu. And chat is screaming at him and said, push this button. And he just keeps looking at one part of the screen. It's a rather small, text that's underneath the box that he's currently in. And the button that they're telling him to push is the control button. And that button isn't listed in that little part of the screen. And so, again, streamer goes, that doesn't make sense. Just to the right, like if you're looking at the whole screen layout, you have the box that he's in, which is the wrong box, by the way. He's looking at the little sub-menu here that explains what to do inside of this box, which is the wrong box. I'm going to keep emphasizing this. Right next to it, right here, the largest thing on the entire screen. It is using the largest font. It is highlighted. It says control to switch to, I can't remember what they're called there. I know them as radial menus. So whatever the keyboard equivalent of radial menus are. It says right there, it is dead center in the screen. It is the largest thing on the screen, and it's highlighted. This chat is going a mile a minute. Push control, push control. I don't know why I would push control. He refuses to push control because it's not in the little box over here. So he's like, no, I don't know why I'd push control. Why would I push control? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And finally, someone says, look in the center of the screen. And he goes, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Well, that's stupid. It doesn't make sense. Every other menu has been down here. Why would I ever look anywhere else on the screen? And again, they had decided that the reason that they couldn't do what they want is they were on the right screen and it just wasn't giving them the right option. What the actual problem was they were in the wrong menu. So it was they were in the wrong menu, but they decided, no, it's not my fault. And then they went on like a 5-minute long tirade. This is the dumbest thing ever. This is the most unintuitive UI that has ever been created. It was created for stupid controllers, and it doesn't work on a keyboard and mouse. This is the dumbest thing ever. And people in chat are going, no, you're just being stupid. And this streamer got massively upset. Started threatening to permaban people, started pouting, and basically became a petulant child. And started throwing a little temper tantrum. No, it's not my fault. They put it in the wrong space, and it's unintuitive, and it's stupid because it's made for controllers. And everybody knows keyboard and mouse is so much better, and they should make everything for keyboard and mouse. And that's the reason I brought up the PC Master Race, because PC Master Race thinks keyboard and mouse is the ultimate control scheme, and anything that is not catered specifically to keyboard and mouse is the dumbest thing ever. And it's not. Keyboard and mouse works very well for quite a few things. It doesn't work well for a massive amount of games. Action RPGs and stuff like that, where you have to do a lot of action. Keyboard and mouse does not work well unless you have to aim something, because aiming with a mouse is remarkably good. Fun fact, they've actually done studies and they found out that keyboard and mouse is actually not the most accurate way to play first-person shooters. The thing that actually gives you the highest amount of accuracy is a controller with motion controls for fine-tuning. So basically, you have a controller, and you use the right stick to move your aim around, and then you can tilt the controller to slightly adjust where your aim is. So the right stick does large motion control, and then you can tilt and move the controller for kind of fine adjustment. And after doing a bunch of studies, they were able to prove that that is by far the most accurate way to play a first-person shooter. It is heads and tails beyond more accurate than a keyboard and mouse. Because, again, unless you have something that allows you to instantly switch between large aiming and small adjustments for your mouse, which some mice do, but it's requires a bunch of extra button presses, and most mice are not really designed to just switch instantly between that. Most of them will have kind of DPI trackers that let you go between a set number of different things, and in order to get to the one that you want, you have to go through 3 or 4 of them. So anyway, mouse and keyboard, not really that great. And so this particular streamer just keeps bitching and moaning and throwing a little temper tantrum. No, this is the stupidest thing ever. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. You're all stupid. You want to know why I know you're stupid? Because I can do this in another game and you guys can't. And I know that you can't because I've seen other people that can't do it. And so you're all just really stupid. Threw a little temper tantrum, which is exactly what the chat wanted. That's what the chat likes to see, is this particular streamer throwing a little temper tantrum like a petulant child. And they are massive, by the way. Absolutely massive. So I don't know if they realize that the reason people watch them is to watch them throw little temper tantrums, but it is what it is. And they're extremely successful. And as I mentioned in my video yesterday, if they do that on purpose, all the power to them. If they realize that people are watching them because their people in chat just want to feel morally superior to them by watching them, break down and throw a temper tantrum, all the power to them. That's like 3D chess level thinking. If they don't realize that that's why a large portion of their audience is watching them is just to watch them melt down, it sucks to be you, dude. But whatever. Anyway, so getting back to the original topic of this, I see this constantly. And again, not everybody says that doesn't make sense. Some people go, well, that's stupid. And some people just don't acknowledge it at all and go, well, then they're wrong. But I see this constantly where all the information is presented to them to be able to come to the right conclusion. But because they just arbitrarily decide something is true that isn't, and base all of their assumptions on, well, I made this decision initially based on no information whatsoever, just because this is the way I want it, that now everything else is stupid because I made an assumption that was wrong and nothing supports the assumption that I made. And it can't be that I made the incorrect assumption. No, it's that everything else is wrong except for me. And again, I have seen this over and over and over. I saw this in business constantly. You would get these managers that would go, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. I'm doing everything that I learned in business school, and yet the business is failing. Well, then maybe the stuff you learned in business school is wrong. No, I paid $120,000 for my MBA. It is right. Everything else is wrong. This doesn't make sense. I have been firm with all of my sales staff, and I've given them all sales quotas, and none of them are fulfilling it. And I've started writing up the people that aren't making their sales quotas. This doesn't make sense. They should be selling more. That's how you get people to sell more. Actually, sales quotas in general, from a psychological perspective, tend to lower performance, not increase them, and negative reinforcement or positive punishment, which is the particular style that you're doing here, and negative reinforcement, which is kind of the other version, depending on how you're punishing them. Which, by the way, what is it? Positive punishment is giving them something with the intention of stopping them from doing something. So if somebody does something wrong and you give them extra hours or something like that, that would be considered positive punishment because you're giving something to them and you're doing it specifically to try and discourage something. Reinforcement is negative reinforcement is taking something away negative reinforcement is taking something away to encourage someone to do something. Something like, you did something well, so I'm going to let you go home early. I am taking away some of the hours you would normally be required to work in order to reinforce the fact that I like what you were doing there. This person was working entirely on a punishment method. And they're like, well, it doesn't make sense. I'm doing everything and they should be doing better. No. Punishment very rarely leads to increases in performance. It can stop decreases in performance sometimes. But more often than not, it's a remarkably ineffective method of manipulation and control, and generally is only really effective when the punishment itself is extreme enough that people are terrified of it, i.e., prison, death, things like that. Those are all forms of positive punishment. You are giving something. Or I guess prison would technically be negative punishment because you're taking away their freedom for it. Things like that. But they're all punishment-based systems, and punishment-based systems really only work if you do extreme things. You know, a write-up is generally not going to be a really, really effective system to get them to do something brand new. It really should be used as a last resort and should be combined with other forms of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. They're significant. No. Trust me. When I was in their position, I got threatened with a write-up if I didn't make my sales, and therefore I became the bestseller in the company. And no, this is working. They're just stupid. And that's always what it comes down to, is people will blame the fact that they can't understand the situation on everybody but themselves. And when I say the majority of people think like this, I have watched over and over in retail, in board games, in tabletop RPGs, in video games, everywhere I have ever gone, everywhere, conventions, everywhere I have gone, this idea of it doesn't make sense shows up over and over and over and over and over. And it is always someone else's fault. It is never, obviously, I don't have enough information. And here is something that a lot of people just don't seem to understand. The human brain does not operate super well under conflict. If something, quote unquote, doesn't make sense, your brain will do mental gymnastics to make it make sense. Your brain just doesn't work that way. There's a thing called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is basically when something in your worldview or something that completely contradicts something that you know to be true happens in front of you, and your brain can't understand why. What you have just seen should not be possible, and so you get this feeling called cognitive dissonance. It is unbelievably uncomfortable. It is one of the most kind of life-changing experiences you can have, because your brain is basically like 404, no work. And your brain doesn't understand how to do that. Your brain can't function in a system where reality contradicts itself. And so what happens when you're presented with cognitive dissonance, one of two things can happen. One, your brain comes up with a way to justify it. And generally, that justification will make no sense to anyone but you, because your brain has just lied to you. That is the more common thing, because the other thing that can happen requires you to make actual effort and actually open your mind. And that is, you realize that what you thought was true was not. And now you have to reconsider everything you have based that particular belief on. And it is a life-changing experience. You are never the same the first time you do that. That, oh my God, everything I thought was absolutely wrong. And it's an extremely difficult thing to go through, which is why most people will do the mental gymnastics route. And they're not doing it consciously. This is your brain's self-defense mechanism. It cannot work in a contradiction. It's not how your brain works. When you take that fact, which it is 100% a fact, this is not an opinion. When you take that fact that your brain can't work under contradiction and you apply it to everything that humans have ever created, you will start to understand that almost every time you see something and think, that doesn't make sense, you should immediately translate that to, I don't have enough information. What am I missing? But, like I said, the vast majority of people do not do that. Their instant reaction to something that doesn't make sense is, somebody else must have done something wrong. Not, I have misunderstood the situation. It's somebody else did something wrong. And that's why this doesn't make sense. And when it comes to games and things like that, I've mentioned this before. I can't remember where. But when I do like reviews, like my in-depth reviews and stuff like that, I will disagree with some people because they go, well, this is just really badly designed. And my response is always going to be, no, you don't understand the design choices behind it. Because you've decided it was designed to do this, and it was actually designed to do this. To go back to Monster Hunter World, you've decided that the purpose of the Scout Flies is to make important things glow. What they were actually designed to do is replicate the feeling of tracking a monster, which takes time and patience. You're not supposed to just randomly run through the woods and know exactly where they are. And that's what happens constantly when people... I found a lot of times the more, I guess, anger-based reviewers, most of their bad reviews are based on them just making a decision about how the game is supposed to work and then getting really, really upset and taking it personally that it doesn't work the way that they decided it was supposed to work. And they don't look into it and try and find out how it was designed. The basic rule of thumb when you are judging someone else's creation is you need to approach it from the point of view that is designed to work. And that seems like a really weird thing, but it's an extremely important idea to understand. Nobody creates something that is intentionally broken. Again, that doesn't work with how our brain works. We humans can't actually design that. It doesn't mean that people don't sabotage things. It doesn't mean that they don't design things to break. It means that they don't intentionally create something that doesn't work. If they design something to break, it doesn't mean that they designed it not to work. That means the purpose of their design was to cause it to break at a certain point for a certain reason. And that reason could be a lot of different things. It could be that it was designed to break at that point because if you go too far beyond that point, cataclysmic things happen. So having it break at this point prevents all the really bad things from happening. This is an extremely common aspect of safety systems in general, is they will be designed to fail before some cataclysmic failure can happen. A really, really simple example of this is older fire suppressant systems would actually have a thing that when it heated to a certain point, it would break, and that would cause the water start flowing, and it would turn the system on effectively. And that was what it was designed to do. And the reason it was designed to do that was because if it got above that particular point, then the whole building could be engulfed and bad things would happen. And if it just happened whenever, then you would waste the fire suppressant system. So it was designed to break. So going back to the idea of looking at problems, if something was designed by a human being, it was designed to work. Doesn't mean it does work. It means the design philosophy behind it was designed to work. And if you want to fix what is wrong, you need to look at how it was designed. Because again, if we look at the sprinkler system, if somebody goes, oh my God, this thing just breaks whenever it gets kind of warm. I know what we'll do. We will put metal reinforcements in it so it doesn't break when it gets warm. Or we will put insulators around it so that it can sustain higher temperatures, and that way it won't break because, we don't have to worry about it getting too hot in the summer and it accidentally breaking. And they've completely missed the original purpose because both of those things would ruin the product. Not only that, but when they don't work the way that they were designed to work, they also ruin the product that they're trying to protect. And again, this happens constantly, over and over. I watch reviewers that completely miss the point on products and just go, well, this is stupid. it was stupid and the person that designed it was stupid. No, they're not. Anyone that has ever created something from scratch or even just modified somebody else's thing, whether you're talking about tabletop RPGs, inventions, entrepreneurship, whatever it is, if you've created something yourself, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, it is a pain in the ass. It is remarkably complex, and you fail over and over and over again because until you understand the entire system that you are operating inside, you will always make mistakes because you won't understand how the whole system works, and you won't anticipate the one part of the system that you've never personally experienced. That's how it works. People that create new things are not stupid. However, there can be times when they approached a situation with the idea, well, that doesn't make sense. Meaning, well, obviously I've done nothing wrong. Something else must be wrong that's not a part of me or my idea. It's a bad habit to get into. I personally, when I approach a problem, because of just how vehemently I hate that phrase, not because I think it's a bad phrase, but because I have seen it misused over and over and over and over and over again, I generally won't use that phrase with a few caveats. The phrase that I use more often than not, and it has become a habit for me because I did it intentionally so many times, is, well, that's interesting. Because that instantly changes it from, that doesn't make sense, somebody did something wrong, to, that's interesting. I need to learn more about this because obviously I don't have all of the information. The one time where I will use the phrase that doesn't make sense is when I am running a game and I have intentionally put something into the lore that is either used an unreliable narrator. Basically, the players have been told something that's a lie because the person that told it to them thought it was the truth. Unreliable narrator is such a useful tool in writing stories and things like that. Or something has happened that has changed how the laws of magic or physics work, and I want them to understand that this is a big deal because 100% it's not supposed to work that way, and the fact that it is working that way should tell them that something major is going on. I've done this quite a few times where players will do something and they'll go, wait a minute, what just happened? I said, this happened. They go, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'll have them roll a check. And if they roll high enough, I'll go, you are absolutely right. This shouldn't happen. According to your understanding of the laws of magic and the laws of physics, what you have just observed isn't possible. There's no possible way that could have happened under those rules. However, you are confident in the fact that you just observed that exact thing happen. And by giving them this conflicting information, they can understand, oh, I have to think about things differently because the rules that I'm used to apparently don't apply to this particular incident. It's a really effective tool. That is the only time I use that doesn't make sense anymore. And I would highly encourage everyone, take that doesn't make sense and throw it in the bin. Put it in your little box of DM tools that you don't use anywhere else in the world because it's the only time you should be using that phrase. Anytime something happens that doesn't make sense to you, you should instantly replace, well, that doesn't make sense, or, well, that's stupid, with, that's interesting. Because that means you do not understand what is supposed to happen here, and you have made an incorrect assumption while you are dealing with something. Does that mean that you are never going to come up in a situation where it was just a bad design or something like that? No, there are a lot of things that are just bad game design. Half of Pathfinder 2nd edition fits into that category. But if you look at the motivation behind those choices, the idea that Pathfinder 2nd Edition was designed to give you as many different options as possible, ignoring the fact that some of the options don't actually do anything beneficial. They just want you to have lots of different things in front of you. Then things start making a little bit more sense. Okay, well, that's why they have like 72 different traits for weapons, and the majority of them don't actually change how the weapon works at all. They are simply there so that you can list the same weapon 7 different times with a slightly different name. Or they can make it so that you can get the same proficiency 7 different ways. Or they can just say that, well, yes, you can't use this particular knife, but you can use this other one because this is a dwarvish knife and you're not proficient with dwarvish knives, but you are proficient with elvish knights. Well, what's the difference? Well, one is dwarvish or one is dwarven and one is elvish. Or maybe it's elven and dwarvish. I can never remember the possessive version of those nouns because both of them are used, but one of them is correct and one of them is incorrect. Anyway, enough ranting about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So yeah, I thought for my final Daily December, I would talk about probably the biggest frustration I see with, again, the majority of the population. I was shocked when I realized that most people do not look at a situation and think, obviously I've misunderstood something here. And the default assumption of most people is, well, everyone else is wrong and I'm right. It never, and part of that is, again, I'm a victim of abuse. I've been abused my entire life. And one of the side effects of being an abuse victim in general, whether it was just a single event or it was constant over your entire life, one of the most common things for abuse victims to do is they automatically assume it's their fault. Especially child abuse of a victim, or just not child abuse, but just younger victims where during your formative years you were subject to some form of abuse. The instant reaction is, it's my fault. I did something wrong. And you actually kind of see this in things like divorce proceedings. A lot of kids will blame themselves for their parents getting divorced because during the divorce or before the divorce, the parents start fighting and arguing, and the kids will experience some of that, even if the parents never intentionally directed at the children. It just happens when two people are unhappy together and forced to be in close proximity. Friendly fire happens. And so part of this, I would assume, has to do with the fact that my history of abuse has made me always think that if something goes wrong, it's my fault. And it's something I've been dealing with I've been actively trying to get myself out of that habit for probably about 7 to 8 years now. Shortly before I started going to the therapy, I didn't realize I did that until I was well into my adult years. I guess maybe now it's been over a decade, because I started in my mid-20s and now I'm in my mid-30s. But yeah, I see the vast majority of people just simply assume that they're always right, and it must be that something else is wrong. And that is such a destructive mentality to have, because it causes you to make additional bad decisions that cause additional problems to happen until either whatever you're trying to do collapses completely, or somebody else comes in and fixes the problems that you made. But it is not a way to live sustainably in any way, shape, or form. You cannot run a successful business if nothing is ever your fault. You cannot have a successful relationship, whether we're talking intimate, whether we're talking friends, family. You cannot have a successful relationship if all the problems in the relationship happen because of other people. You have to have the ability to introspect in everything in your life. If you cannot admit that you might be in the wrong, you will always be in the wrong every single time. And when it comes to problem solving, if you always assume that you understand what's going on, without doing the due diligence of looking into everything in front of you, like the giant fucking button that is highlighted and is the largest text on the goddamn screen and is dead center in the screen, I'm not bitter about this at all. You can't take it personally, and that's another thing that happens really, really often is people misattribute failure with being a failure. If you fail, then you are a failure. No. You can experience failure without being a failure. And too many people take things personally instantly. It's not that I did anything wrong. You all are stupid. The people that designed this are stupid. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. Wah, 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 wah. That's how a child deals with things, because they don't have the emotional maturity to understand that, yeah, every so often you're wrong. In fact, if you were to look at every decision, really, phone? That's my phone. You guys probably can't hear it, but I'm going to see if it's actually picking up or not, because my phone is on my bed, which is like 10 or 15 feet that direction. And it's playing a song. And if you guys can hear, it's a cool song. But I think, because I don't want to just leave you guys on a screen, I think that's where I'm going to end it today. But I want you all to kind of go away with this idea. That doesn't make sense. Get rid of it from your vocabulary. Replace it with that's interesting. And understand, if you see something that doesn't make sense, probably means that you have misunderstood the situation in some way, shape, or form. You are missing some bit of information that might be right in front of your face. And if you want to be a more successful person in everything that you do, you need to understand information is key, and it is extremely common to misread a situation. It's all for me. See you guys next year. All right? Bye-bye.